Right Buddy from Backroad Buddies of Red Tail Lodge, and today we are in the beautiful Grand Canyon National Park, and I'm here with Ranger Kensie, who has agreed to talk with us on her day off, so we appreciate that, and hopefully she'll provide us with some interesting information for you. And so I think, Kensie, why don't you get us started by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved and how you became a park ranger.
All right, I'm Ranger Kensie. I'm really an outdoor naturalist enthusiast. Earliest memories is national parks. I got a degree in geology, so I absolutely am obsessed, passionate with nature, learning things, being outside. How I got into the Park Service is an interesting story. I did not know I wanted to be a park ranger until I walked up on the job in uniform for day one, honestly. I applied for the job. It was a job I was willing to look for that I could use geology with because I didn't want to do mining or oil like most people do. And once I got into it, I absolutely love my job. I get to be outside. I get to share the outdoors with visitors who want to either experience it for the first time or to get something more in depth, to be able to protect these important places, how to tell people how to respect these places more, and just to have a good time outside.
Oh, nice. So what kind of training or education besides geology did you do before you applied, or you just
you have to have
you
have a 4-degree college degree, like bachelor's in something. It doesn't really have to be something specific, though. If you want to work at a historical site, you probably want to get a degree in history sort of thing, but they're very flexible. Training-wise, there wasn't too much involved beforehand. They do want you to have customer service experience before you come in, because 100% of my job is customer service. all of it involves some sort or another. With the degree, I chose geology because I was just really interested in that. Like I said, I didn't really think about being a park ranger until I was already a park ranger. They do have us train before we actually start the job for the season. It's mostly on how to be respectful towards visitors, different kind of situations we might get involved with, how to give programs, because they want us to not just give a lecture. Lectures aren't really that fun anyway. We try and have different techniques to involve the audience or the visitors in one way or another during our programs.
Okay, nice. So is the Grand Canyon the first place you've been a park ranger, or have you been at other parks as well?
Grand Canyon is the very first one. I worked down here on the South Rim last summer. Then I ended up getting a job on the North Rim for this summer and this season. I've not worked anywhere else yet. I'm not opposed to it. It's just really where you get the job.
Oh, okay. So what are the big differences between South Rim and North Rim?
Oh, there's so many different things. The ecosystem's very different. We get more rain. We had snow through May and early June. Way more precipitation overall. There's very few visitors that go. Generally, the visitors there are very nice and respectful towards nature, so it's a little bit easier of a job. The South Rim, it's very, very busy most of the year, especially spring and summer vacation. Way more people. I've learned that for the South Rim, many people, this is their very first national park. So we try and make it a good one at least.
Oh, nice. So what advice would you give a first-time visitor of the Grand Canyon?
First-time visitor, of course, it depends on how long, but go see the views. If you can, go on a hike. Do not try and get everything in, though. You should take your time when you come to national park or go on vacation. Try not to stress everything. If you got a few points that you want to go to, get to those, and if you have other time. Now, if you're staying, though, overnight, or if you're around Grand Canyon or any national park, you should stay for the half of the park that's after dark, for sure. I love the stars. Grand Canyon, you can have 3,000 stars on a new moon night. Full moon views, you don't have stars, but the view, oh my gosh, the view of the full moon is different, but very beautiful.
Oh, nice. So if someone was going to hike down into the canyon, what advice would you give them?
If you're wanting to hike down into the canyon, it's going to be extremely challenging, unless you hike into the canyon because you live here every day. Even I don't do that every day. You want to do a lot of research beforehand. Either ask a ranger and you're doing it next year, do research on the internet from other people. If you're on social media, join like Facebook groups. You want to know what you're getting yourself into, because getting into the canyon is 100% remote. Can't always even get a helicopter down there depending on what we're even trying to do. There's very few people you'll come across unless you're in the main trails that we call the corridor, where most people do rim to rim. You'll need water, always need water. If you're not on the corridor, you will 100% need water because there's no natural water sources half the time. It's going to be really challenging. You got to train up for it in one way or another. There's multiple ways to train up for it. Pack the right amount of stuff. Ask other people to make sure you know what you're doing. But it's going to be a lot of fun as long as you do it right.
Oh, nice. So if, let's say, someone is hiking down in the canyon and they get bit by a rattlesnake or stung by a scorpion or something,
Yeah.
what should they do?
So if it's like stung by a rattlesnake, you need to get help ASAP because you can die real quick from that. Very few people. It's very rare to get bitten by a rattlesnake, thank goodness. Scorpion, unless you're like one of the 0.0% chance that you're allergic to scorpion venom, you won't die. You'll probably just get another night in the canyon because it's going to hurt for about 24 hours. But you'll survive really easily. We don't have any deadly scorpions down here, thank goodness. We have a lot of them. If it's anything else, like a twisted ankle, you just get for help. If it's life or death, we try and get a helicopter down. But half the time it's not even possible for us. And if it's at night, we can't fly. We can't see anything. We don't want to fly ourselves into a cliff or anything like that. And so that's where being prepared, knowing like what to do, like how do you avoid rattlesnakes, is usually a better way to prepare and go down safely than just to rely on being rescued.
Now, if you do need to seek help, like especially on the main corridor from, which is North Kaibab down to Phantom Ranch and back up
South Kaibab or Bright Angel.
Bright Angel. If you do get into trouble, are there places you can seek help from?
Yeah, so like getting one of our maps, the corridor map is what we call it, there'll be locations where we have emergency phones. So that could be the nearest place. We oftentimes have volunteer and paid rangers that'll be hiking the trails, and they'll have radios. Other people can either call for help or help you, because some people do have like the satellite phones. Okay. And that's the best luck you'll have is on the corridor. If you're going any other trails, you should bring your own satellite phone or those emergency devices, so you can call out yourself, because there's a good chance you won't see anyone else on those trails.
Okay, nice. So if someone was just visiting the Rim for the first time, what would you tell them that they probably must see, or what, the favorite parts, at least your favorite parts of the park that they don't miss?
Yeah. I guess the specific views don't necessarily matter, because you should pick a few. Sometimes I think it's what you do that's more important, though, versus a specific view. I always think for visitors, if it's your very first time, Grand Canyon, this can be any place too. Once you see that view of Grand Canyon, you should just sit or stand there and soak it in for a moment. Don't take out your phone yet. Take a picture. Don't think of anything else. Don't get the camera out. Just absorb it there for the moment. And I think that's probably one of the best things you can do versus just going to a specific point. Because I can tell you my favorite points, and half the time it's not going to be your favorite point either.
Well, that can be true, yeah. Okay, so let's see. If you're hiking down below Rim, are there any things that you would want to kind of make sure that you enjoy or see or do below Rim?
Below Rim, you should take plenty of breaks, because you'll have to anyway. It's a really challenging trail. You should always look at the view whenever you stop. Depending on how far you go is what you can and can't do. Day trips, there's not much to see other than going into the canyon, but getting into the canyon itself, the way I like to explain it, provides a more intimate experience with Grand Canyon, because most of Grand Canyon's a canyon, not just the Rim. It's mostly just figuring out where you're going and what you can do, but just really enjoy your time there. Don't try and get to some point real fast. Just take your time and enjoy it. You're on vacation, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and we just left Buddy and I just finished a Rim to Rim, and yeah, we kind of felt that way too. It did feel much more intimate being below Rim, and even after 5 days, I wasn't ready to come out.
Exactly.
Even though my feet hurt and I was, but yeah, it was just a neat experience.
Even rangers that live here their whole lives will not see all Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
Lived here about 11 months now between both my seasons, and I've barely seen most of the canyon.
Yeah, but yeah, it does feel different and intimate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. So tell us a little bit more about your own experience. Like, what was your favorite moment here at Grand Canyon?
Favorite moment, like off time, off work, going to Plateau Point for sunset, staying at Indian Garden overnight, taking my pretty little time, as I like to explain it. Hiked out to Plateau Point, had to hike back with flashlights, but you could see down to the river really well, and you get to experience sunset inside the canyon. Because when you're up at the view, at the rim for sunset, you get to see the whole canyon from at least your area. You get to see all the beautiful colors. If you look to the east, you get to see the sunset to the west. In the canyon, you probably won't see the sunset, but you're completely immersed in all those vibrant colors during sunset. During work, it's not really one specific time, but hearing people's reaction for their very first view of Grand Canyon. Those are always fun.
Oh, I bet. So you want to tell us what your scariest moment in the canyon was?
So one of the scariest moments I have experienced was during work. Thankfully, I did not watch the actual event happen, but there's a guy that fell off right near Mather Point. It was like 500 feet, so he did not survive. And I came in a few hours after the event, and I was helping crowd control, essentially keep people away from that area. So the people doing search and rescue were able to search for the body and recover the body a little bit later. It was really unfortunate. None of us really liked such a situation. I mean, no, I don't think anyone ever would. Yeah. I hope to never see someone fall off the cliff and actually die from that.
Okay, so what's the most interesting story that either you've experienced or heard about in the canyon?
Real or fake?
Oh, you decide.
Okay, really funny fake story. So back in like the early 20s, like 1920s, there was a gentleman, a tour guide named John Hance. But during the Park Service, still he was in Park Service, so he would tell these outrageous stories. Some of them are true, some of them weren't. Really great stories though. And there was one where he had a cabin kind of down by the El Tovar that he had to stay the winter in. To survive the winter, he had to grow and store a lot of food. He had a small corn field that he was growing corn, and right when it was about ripe, a squirrel stole one. John Hance ran after the squirrel, and the squirrel ended up going down the hole, and John Hance started digging after the squirrel. He has to have that piece of corn cob. Kept digging, the squirrel kept digging, he kept digging, the squirrel kept digging, and before you know it, he dug Grand Canyon.
Well, that's a funny one. So what's the most interesting real story, you know?
Most interesting real story? Oh my gosh. I think a lot of it, I mean, there can be a few different things. You know, it's hard to choose a favorite, right?
Yeah.
I think it's really how people have lived or have viewed Grand Canyon historically. So we've had Native Americans living here for about 14,000 years, give or take. And Grand Canyon to them is one of the most important or sacred sites, and for some cultures it is the most important. And that's been happening ever since they've lived here. And when the first Americans came over, the Spaniards, the Spanish explorers, conquistadors, 1500s, they looked at Grand Canyon like, this is impossible to cross, why are we here? He sent 3 gentlemen down to try and get to the river and back. They made about a quarter of the way down in about 5 hours. They couldn't cross it. 1800s, most people saw that we can't make money off of this place. It's horrible. Why were we even here? Let's leave. The first geologist that came actually was the first one that saw this place as important. And it was almost until we became a national park is that not too many people saw it as like a place to come visit just for the beauty or to just protect it for what it is. So for the fact we actually had to fight really hard to make this a national park is really interesting. Yeah. But it's a good thing that we have it today, because a lot of people have tried mining in here. We have had mining for a national park, most of it uranium, but now we have protected at least the canyon.
So why don't you tell us kind of what a typical day working as a ranger, or if there is a typical day working as a ranger here?
There's typical stuff we'll do, but maybe not a typical day. Or most days are typical. There'll be ones, you know, any job or any life will have abnormal days. For the North Rim this season, it's a little bit different than the South Rim. Different people, different amount of people, different situations. And so for the North Rim, we'll start about 7:30. This morning meeting every morning at 7:30. We'll either be working at the visitor center for anywhere from an hour and a half to about 4 hours, usually 2 shifts next to each other. Working at the visitor center, we're answering questions, usually trip planning. Someone comes in, this is my first time to Grand Canyon, what do I do? Sort of questions. Sometimes someone will ask like, what is this bird or what is that plant? Answering stuff like that, or someone's interested in geology, telling about ranger programs. We'll do ranger programs, and so on the North Rim we have 3 ranger programs a day. We have a geology talk, a California condor talk, and an evening program. In evening programs we get to choose what we want to talk about. And so we'll do one of those a day. We'll do a whole 4-hour shift of just going out on the scenic drive and go out there in uniform and talk with folks as they want, essentially, and that's what we would call the scenic shift. And then the evening programs, we work late, but we start late so we get to sleep in. It's nice we get to sleep in 1 day a week. Like for me, I do astronomy talks, and so I'll go out on the Grand Canyon lodge porch, turn off all the lights to make it dark, and point out constellations and tell stories.
Oh, nice.
And there are sometimes extra things, like if we have time, we can either work on programs if we want to make a new one, change it, or if we're beginning of the season, we need to make a program because we have to be able to do all 3 of them. We can also just go and walk on a trail if we want, or we can go out anywhere as long as we have that time and as long as we're back where we're supposed to be at that one time.
Okay. So how many days a week do you work?
So for the North Rim, we work 4 days a week, and then we have 3-day weekends, so we do 4/10s.
Okay.
South Rim, they will do a 5-day week, then a 4-day week, and somewhere in there, if you add it all up, it's 40 days a week. So it can depend on the park. Sometimes it just can depend on which district in the park you're in. It's actually what you do. I like the 4-day weeks because then I always have a 3-day weekend.
Yeah.
And from the North Rim, to get to the next town that really has anything is at least 2 hours away.
Yeah.
And so if I want to go visit someplace, or if I want to spend some time getting groceries, then I have a little bit more flexibility and time to do it.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I think I also heard like down at Phantom Ranch, they do like 10 days on and 4 days off or something.
Yeah.
But then they have to hike out. So.
Yeah, no, they have to hike into the canyon to work.
Yeah.
And so for Indian Garden, this is like 4.5 miles, and to Phantom Ranch, it's 9.5 because they live on the South Rim when they're not working versus the North Rim. And so since they have to hike in and out, and that can take up to a day to hike to Phantom Ranch, depending on which ranger you are,
Yeah.
it's way more reasonable that they live down there for anywhere from 7 to 10 days in a row. They'll work for all 7 to 10 days, and then they'll have like a 5-day break.
Oh, nice.
And then all their food and gear that they don't hike down with is carried down by mules.
Oh, okay.
So they don't have to carry a week's worth of
Okay.
actual food. Because I mean, I don't know about you, I would not want to constantly be living off of backpacking food.
Yeah.
That's only what's reasonable to carry by backpack,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
Because sometimes even when they're hiking down there, they might have to go off and running and rescuing someone.
Yeah.
That's half their job, is hiking up and down trails nearby, hanging out at the ranger station, and sometimes saving people's lives.
Okay. So, I understand that you're a seasonal employee, so you're only working part of the year. And is that true of most rangers, or and what do you do the rest of the year?
Yep, so in any national park, especially in the summer, a big chunk of them will be seasonals. As a government seasonal, by definition, I can only work up to 6 months in one job. Not every year, or in 1 year. And for me, I'm definitely seasonal. Usually if you work an X amount of seasonal jobs, then you can work up to get into a permanent job. On rare occasions, some rangers do actually like staying seasonal. It's fun. You get to move around. I'm from Idaho. And so I've lived in Montana, Colorado, Arizona, and California for seasonal jobs, not just for the Park Service. So that's actually fairly fun. Have to get tied down to one spot. For the permanent jobs, there's few and far in between, honestly, especially in the winter. And usually if you're permanent, you work in the summer and the winter. They usually get about 1 to 2 months off, somewhere in the off season. How long you get off, it depends on the job. Sometimes it's up to 6 months. It really depends on the job and where you are. For me in the off season, I've worked for the Forest Service, the United States Forest Service before. I've done like a winter seasonal, no, that's the wrong word. Like retail jobs in the winter. This winter I'm going back to Idaho by chance. I'm going to be volunteering on weekends, and then since it's not quite had the winter job showed up, I'm still looking for the winter job. It's just that time of year. There's always that period of in between where it's just like, what am I doing this winter? What am I doing next summer? It can get a little stressful. But you always figure out something.
Yep.
We don't have as much of a budget anymore as the Park Service used to, and so we don't have as many of employees as we should. Because if the North Rim had full 7 employees, we'd have 15 about. We're about 8. So that can always cause issues for during the season and then trying to find a job in the winter too.
Okay. So looking forward, do you plan on coming back to Grand Canyon next year, or are you going to try to move around to another national park, or what does your future look like?
For next year, I'm going to reapply for the North Rim. There's some certain opportunities that if I'm able to come back and work the job, it's up in the air, that they'll provide me experience that will be useful for other future jobs, like doing a lot more astronomy work, running events, things like that, more lead positions. The reason why it's kind of like up in the air is that I have to reapply. They're not doing rehire in the North Rim, not because of us, it's just logistics, I guess. For the future, I'm always okay going to other parks. I don't limit myself. As a geologist, I probably don't want to go work in a historical site, because that's just history. I want everything else too. But really, if you want to get the job or the permanent job, you want to be flexible. But even if I could just get a job everywhere, I love visiting different places, traveling different places, getting different experience. I mean, heck, it's a national park.
Yeah.
Or national park sites.
Yeah.
Being able to work at places like this is amazing. I mean, the coworkers are great. They treat us really well as far as I've experienced. Getting to live in beautiful places like this is my backyard.
Yeah.
I'm really fortunate,
really
and so I'm really happy. Calling any place beautiful in my backyard is great.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see what the future holds.
Okay. So if you happen to leave Grand Canyon and go somewhere else, what would you miss the most about being in the Grand Canyon?
Can I just say being in Grand Canyon?
Sure, you could say that.
Yeah, Grand Canyon's absolutely beautiful, but very few people think it's not. It's a very fun and unique ecosystem, especially the North Rim. I mean, if you go to Arizona, if you think of Arizona, you think of it's going to be a really hot desert. We had snow through early June on the North Rim, Arizona, things like that. Really fun, unique animals that you get to only see in Grand Canyon. And so I'll miss the things that really call Grand Canyon unique. And of course the view. You'll always miss the view.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, Kensie. We really appreciate you taking time on your day off to talk with us. And
For sure.
Hopefully our audience appreciated the information and found it interesting. And if you did and you haven't already, please subscribe. We'd really appreciate that. So, ta-ta for now.
Bye.